Let's check in with the doc and look at things with a wider lens. Pastor Richards on OMG.
Hello, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Daniel. Good morning to everyone in the studio there with you, I suppose, Flex.
Good morning.
And,
good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. And our people here in St. Vincent going about their regular work day. I hope that life has not been too disrupted for you, and by and large that most of you are able to continue your life support activities. In other words, going to work and taking care of what you've got to take care of. With caution, mind you, with caution, because I have kept throughout this period advocating caution as you go about doing what you're supposed to do. Some people are experiencing the disruption a little bit more so than others. And my thoughts are with you. With those, I listened to a little bit of Dr. Friday this morning, and in the early part where he lamented and picked out a couple of sectors that were hard hit by the fallout from COVID and the actions that have been taken, and some of it imposed on us, because not all of the things that are happening here we have decisively and intentionally said, this is what we're going to do. Some of it has happened by default, particularly within the tourism industry, both by vessels coming here and by aircraft coming here. And so whether or not we like it, that is upon us. And so some people have been put out by it. So my thoughts are with you. But this morning, by the way, Daniel, before I launch into it, is there anything that you wanted to comment?
No. I listen. I am all ears, because I said, Lord, Pastor has something he really wants to get off his chest this morning. So I
just said good morning, and I just I was out of the starting blocks. So I was like,
no. It's fine. Go ahead. I do have some questions for you, but throughout the course of the morning, I decided that I'm going to do a special program on that specifically, and it deals with women.
Oh yeah. That's one of my pet topic. I am ready.
I am going
Anytime
to be
you're ready
chanting.
for me to do that, just let me know.
Yeah, I'm going to be chanting until people get tired of hearing me talk about it. So that's going to be my mission here.
Good call. And I am in there with you. Don't let it be a 9-day talk.
No.
I'm in there with you.
It's going to be a continuous talk until we see some changes.
Yeah, we will talk. Yeah, but this morning I think I'm concerned about something I'm going to call, I guess it got stirred by what I saw in the U.S., tokenism. And when I say tokenism, window dressing might be a good term. But what lies behind it, you have a nice-looking show window, but what lies behind the show window is ugly and nasty. And these kind of thoughts got provoked because of the race situation in the United States, and what was in the underbelly is now beginning to come out. And that's because I believe that there has been quite a lot of what I would call tokenism, the right optics in many cases with respect to what we thought was progress in race. Now all this goes back way, even in that movement from 1963 throughout most of the 1960s, you thought that civil rights movement, and then what culminated in certain civil rights laws being passed, that was going to be a fix. But you can't fix by law what is embedded in the mind. You follow me, right? You could legislate all you want, but this kind of respect for humanity cannot be legislated. And once you start putting legislation out there, you will get tacit response. You will get people complying on the surface level with the law, but embedded within their soul, embedded within their consciousness, how they feel about race. That does not change. And so we are seeing more and more blacks, for example, in offices, in certain positions, taking up administrative roles. So that particular ceiling we thought, has been cracked. But I am coming back. That's optics. Optics occasioned by the fact that you're pretty much forced into doing these things. It's just for sure. There are people out there who are going to vehemently disagree with me. I remember I had a particularly liberal sociology professor at university in the United States. It was in Texas. And those were my early days. I think that was in my first year in university, just coming into that system. One of the things that I learned, because prior to going there and going to school there, I knew nothing about affirmative action. And I think because I was a black man in a class that was predominantly white, it was a private university, and not many blacks went to that university. But I think because of that, I think he felt like he could toot and show me how much of a liberal he was, and talked about and touting affirmative action and how wonderful it was. And so I think he was surprised at my pushback, and I was upset. I mean, again, I didn't live the life of a black man in the United States, and I didn't go through what they were going through. So as an outsider speaking, having not felt the travail of these blacks there, I was like, why are you doing this? Or who wants affirmative action? And he and I think that sociology class, I can't remember what the topic was for that day, but it got suspended because I was near the back of the class and he's at the front. And I am pushing back and he's pushing back on affirmative action. And I visibly saw him getting redder and redder and redder. Because I was like, my position was, this is window dressing. That was back then. I'm like, this is window dressing. And this is not going to help the black cause any. It is going to stoke the fire, because if you, through affirmative action, and this is not the sum total of affirmative action, but part and parcel of it is that a quota, workplace quota, in terms of how many of your workforce should be Caucasian, or the minority, what percentage should be black. So you pretty much, by law, have to do this window dressing, where it comes down to the fact that you need a black or you need a minority therein. And sometimes a white might be thinking, whether or not this is true, a white might be thinking, a Caucasian might be thinking, oh, he's only there because he has to be there, affirmative action. And might be thinking, I'm losing my job. I'm losing an opportunity to someone, not necessarily that they're more qualified than I am, but because they have to fill a quota. Now, that's not true in all cases, right? So we have seen over the time a number of, if you compare the 70s to now, in terms of profile jobs and post positions and other things with blacks, tokenism, as far as I'm concerned, optics making, because, for example, when Trump takes a picture with an all-white staff, the liberal news media are going to play that all across the world and say, look at him, he's all Caucasian, he's all white, da-da-da. The optics is bad. And then they put up, in their meetings and whatever, they have pictures of a very mixed, profiles, and tout it as presenting different optics, and that is the truth. It is optics. It is what you put out there. So optics don't change anything. What stirs in the soul of a man? You could put all of and this is why the race situation in the United States is playing out the way it is playing out now, because in terms of their tokenism and the window dressing that they have put out there, it's a good show. I mean, I spend a lot of time I shouldn't say spend a lot of time, but even in places like Atlanta, Georgia, where, I have a number of friends there, and I see blacks elevated to certain positions and all of that. It gives the idea that the playing field is being leveled until you examine the soul of men, and you realize that you have changed the window dressing, but you have not changed the soul. Tokenism. And then I will segue from that, Daniel, into what's happening here in St. Vincent, because somebody might be thinking, bring the commentary home. Don't talk about what's happening overseas. Bring the commentary home. But I see on the same level, necessary, hold as I say necessary tokenism and window dressing in a number of things here. Pertinently, we are now in the coronavirus era. And I want to go out on a limb and say that, and I know this is going to attract a tremendous amount of pushback and criticism, but I want to go out on a limb and say that a lot of our responses here in the Caribbean will fit within what I will call tokenism and window dressing. And I will explain why I say this. Because what has been dictated and modeled in the U.S. and more affluent countries with respect to how you should respond to the coronavirus, what constitutes a responsible response. Directions are given. The new term, social distancing, limiting your numbers, shelter in place, these have all become terms that we are now batting around easily. And there are practices and templates that have been modeled and in fact suggested that these are more than suggested, but basically we are directed that these constitute responsible decisions and reactions, such that when you are not doing these things, you are deemed to be an irresponsible entity. If you don't shut down your economy, if you don't shelter in place, if you you don't institute certain measures, even it came down to the wearing of masks. So everything that was directed and modeled, we were supposed to be doing these things. And believe me, some Caribbean governments tried. But you are trying to do what you were directed to do, or the templates that have been set or suggested for you, without the necessary or what I would call the requisite resources and culture and situation to do it. For example, we could not, here in the Caribbean, willy-nilly follow the United States, because while they were given their directions and templates and issuing their orders, they had the response system, emergency response system, and other federal decisions that were taken to buffer and to support with resources their decision. For example, the shelter-in-place decision. For example, the shelter-in-place decision that required people to stay home from work. Some of them salaried workers, but some of them wage earners, which are daily paid, which means that your wage is going to suffer. Which means that people who are restaurant workers and owners are going to suffer terribly, because often, eat-out culture. Which means that if people are not out in commerce, out en masse in commerce, doing what they normally do, that businesses, whether it's Nostrum or Dillard's or whatever, their sales are going to plummet. The mom and pop stores, Family Dollar, Dollar General, all of these people, income earners, is going to go down. But they buffered that, they supported that by trillions, not millions or billions. But when you begin to conceptualize the amount of money that was pumped to support their decision, and therefore they were able, to do that with the stimulus checks and the packages and all of that. They were able to make decisions because they had resources. I think in the Caribbean we have tried to make these kind of decisions also to have this facade of responsibility, but without the necessary resources. Of course, we have stimulus package. For example, here in St. Vincent, we had a $70-something million stimulus package. But how much of this is really window dressing? You call a curfew. You call a curfew from 9 o'clock in the night, or 8 o'clock in the night to 5 o'clock in the morning, or 6 o'clock in the morning. Window dressing. Window dressing that basically checks the right box. We are doing something. But the question is, how much peripheral support are you giving to what you are doing so that it can be sustained? Education. In the matter of how we are doing education, again, the template in the other countries, which, they have had the digital readiness, to use Jerry's term, their pipeline was large enough to accommodate the increased flow that was going to be necessitated because of shifting everything online. Now, the teachers were ready, the system was ready, so they could easily do that. Here in the Caribbean, and which is why we are pushing back CXC dates and all of that, because it's like we were caught in a state of unreadiness, but even so, we still want to follow their template and do the window dressing and do the tokenism. A lot of what we are doing, we feel compelled to do it, compelled that this is the right response, compelled to cut down numbers on the buses. But isn't that tokenism? Isn't that tokenism? Where you 18 are traveling on a bus, but you say, okay, let's cut it down to 12, or and the numbers have been fluctuating. But do you really think that this effectively reduces the chances of effectively reduces the chances of cutting down on the transmission of the virus? For that, as far as I'm concerned, that's tokenism, window dressing, optics. It makes it look like you're doing something, but effectively, it is not really, getting it done. So you open business hours, all right? You're accustomed going from 7 to 9, but you change it from 8 to 5. Again, how effective is that? I mean, I don't get the logic behind it, as if between 8 and 5 or between 5 and 8 in the PM, when you would have ordinarily been open, you closed. I don't see how that works to effectively really reduce the transmission of the virus. But I can see how it works to give the impression, well, we are doing something. So we are filling water baskets, closed baskets with water. That's what we are doing. I mean, in this drought, that's what we are doing. We are filling closed baskets with water because it can contain things are done that are not consistent. They're not thorough. I saw one on Facebook that said it's like having a swimming pool. You should not be peeing in the pool, but then somebody came up with the bright idea. We will have one end of the pool marked off where, this is the peeing section. So if you want to pee in the pool, go to this one end. It doesn't make no sense. Tokenism and window dressing, our tokenism, and I'm wrapping up here, our tokenism and window dressing really won't work as much as we want to sell to the world and sell to the people we are doing something. When you examine these things at their core, you have to ask yourself to what extent are we just trying to give the impression that we are doing something. Because if it is not sustainable, if you say, for example, let me go to education, we clean it, we open it back up school for sixth graders, and I think it's going back to fifth graders now. We're going to do that, but we're going to make sure all the schools are cleaned thoroughly. And you put out a good press release towards that end. And it sounds good, the right optics, window dressing. It's window dressing if the truth and in fact that the schools are not really thoroughly cleaned, like you said. If you say, we, as part of our going back to school package, we are going to, the wearing of masks for the children, all right? And now across in Vincent and the Grenadines, I see, and maybe you have seen, Daniel, you have seen the pictures of the children, many are just not wearing masks. So you talk about, well, they're going to be social distance, but the parents drop them off. The parents drop them off at 8 when they go, parents are going into work or whatever, and they drop off these children. at 8, and you see pictures of them all congregating and playing, which children would. A couple of them with masks, some of them wearing them properly, some of them below their noses, but by and large, many of them just running around skylarking with each other. You have seen the pictures, I have, others have, so you know it's not makeup stuff. So, but you have this nice sounding rollout. Our children are going back to school. We assure you they are going to be safe. We assure you that these measures are in place. The schools will be clean. The desks will be clean. We're going to stagger recess and all of that. And it's a nice sounding rollout. But in effect, I mean, so what I'm saying, the window dressing looks good. It looks really good. But in effect, what really takes place behind the window dressing, there's no consistency. There's no thoroughness. You can't have 15% of the children doing it and 85% of them not doing it. Measures like these, if you're going to institute them, you will have to be thorough. And there has to be conformity. And I'm not just talking schools, Daniel. I just use that for an example. I'm just talking response to COVID. And the only way you can get people, that's why I mentioned the word culture, the only way you can get people in our parts to conform and do things that they're not accustomed doing, you're going to have to legislate it practically. And then you're going to have to enforce it. Because by just putting out there something as a suggestion or saying, we should be doing this, we should be doing that, people are going to pick and choose what they want to do, what they don't want to do. But if you want, for us to be really safe, it's like the peeing in the pool thing. Some can do it and some not doing it. Some stores can have you lined up and then others not doing it. Window dressing, you say, we quarantine. Everybody coming in, all the sailors, we quarantine. You quarantine what? You send them home and they're home with family. And they're going to have conjugal relations. I mean, it's not like a man has been out at sea for X amount of months, and you come home and you tell him, boy, you can't have any kind of conjugal relations until 14 days. Yeah, right. It's a good window dressing. So he comes home, but his wife goes out. That's window dressing, unless you quarantine or you're just peeing in the pool at one end. So I'm concerned that we are putting up a lot of talk when the dressing, and even people out there, not government, mind you, not government, even the things that we are calling for as people in terms of social distancing, this and that and that and that. We want it in some cases, but not in the other cases. If we can't do these things thoroughly throughout the island and in every situation and in every case and all of that, we are peeing in one end of the pool, and it's optics. And it looks good and it sounds good and it makes it seem like if you're being responsible, but ultimately it's tokenism. You're just giving a soft nod to the thing. You're saying, yeah, we acknowledge it's window dressing, but it's not really effectiveness. So I close by asking, what is it that we want? Do we want just a good sounding talk and putting up a good show, or is it that we want meaningful action, effective action, sustain the change? Is that not what we want? And by the way, in case you were wondering, this is not about COVID only or race relations only. This is about all of life. I find that very often we put up a good show, optics matter, and we sell ourselves well, but the real substance of what's behind what we are selling is a different thing altogether. And I'm not going to exclude myself from this, by the way. I'm challenging myself that it should go more than optics. It should go more than window dressing and tokenism, and that the talk we talk should be the walk we walk. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good day.
Thank you, Pastor. Have a good day.
Okay, bye.
Let's check in with the doc and look at things with a wider lens. Pastor Richards on OMG.